The old pickup truck rattled down the gravel road, each bump sending dust clouds dancing in the golden afternoon light. Maya clutched the steering wheel with white-knuckled hands, eyes fixed on the unfamiliar landscape of Pine Ridge Valley. Beside her, a large German shepherd mix huddled against the passenger door, amber eyes wary and watchful. She'd driven 2,000 miles with a dog that wouldn't let anyone touch him, back to the one place she swore she'd never return, to face the man she'd spent 3 years trying to forget. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Almost there, Scout, Maya whispered, more to herself than to the dog. The animal's ears twitched at his name, but his posture remained rigid, distrustful. 3 months since she'd found him half-starved behind the diner where she worked, and he still wouldn't let her near him unless he was eating. 3 months of patience, of sleeping on the floor beside his makeshift bed, of talking to him like he understood every word. The familiar landscape of eastern Montana unfolded before her like pages from a book she'd tried to burn. 3 years since she'd left this place, left him. 3 years of building a life somewhere else, only to have it collapse beneath her like a house of cards. The ranch appeared on the horizon, whispering pines, looking smaller than she remembered. The split-rail fence leaned at precarious angles, weathered gray against the vast emptiness surrounding it. The red barn needed painting. The paddock gate hung slightly askew. Maya slowed the truck, her heart hammering against her ribs like a wild thing seeking escape. Scout whined low in his throat, sensing her anxiety. "It's okay, boy," she soothed, though nothing was okay and hadn't been for longer than she cared to admit. The bankruptcy notice crumpled in her glove compartment. The eviction letter. The final paycheck that wouldn't cover even half of what she owed. And then there was Scout, the dog no shelter would take, too traumatized, too dangerous, they said. The dog that had saved her life when an armed robber had entered the diner after closing, lunging from the kitchen where he'd been hiding to defend the only human who'd shown him kindness. The only option left was the one place she'd promised herself she'd never go back to. As she pulled to a stop in front of the ranch house, dust settling around the truck like a veil, she spotted him. Ethan Miller, tall and steady as the mountains behind him. His Stetson pulled low, shoulders squared against the setting sun, against her arrival. He stood motionless by the corral, one hand resting on the worn wood, as if he'd been expecting her all along. Scout growled, a deep rumble that vibrated through the cab of the truck. "Easy," Maya whispered, though her own pulse raced at the sight of Ethan. 3 years had carved new lines around his eyes, threaded silver at his temples. His face was more weathered, but his stance was the same, feet planted firmly as if daring the world to try moving him. "Stay here," she told Scout, reaching for the door handle. Just for a minute." The earth crunched beneath her boots as she approached Ethan. Each step felt like walking through quicksand, the weight of their history pulling at her ankles, threatening to drag her under. He didn't move as she approached, just watched with those eyes, blue as a summer sky, clear as mountain water. Eyes that had once looked at her with love, then pain, then nothing at all. "Maya." Her name from his lips wasn't a question or a greeting, just a fact, hanging in the air between them. "Hello, Ethan." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and approaching rain. A storm was coming. Appropriate, she thought bitterly. His gaze moved past her to the truck, where Scout's face was visible through the window, teeth bared in silent warning. "That your dog?" he asked, voice neutral, giving nothing away. "Yes." She hesitated. "His name is Scout." "Doesn't look friendly." Maya swallowed hard. "He's not to most people." Something flickered across Ethan's face then. Curiosity, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit. Scout wasn't the only one with trust issues on this ranch. "Why are you here, Maya?" His voice had roughened, like he'd dragged the question across gravel before letting it out. The rehearsed speech died on her tongue. All the careful explanations, the dignity she'd promised herself she'd maintain, gone at the sound of her name in his mouth. "I didn't know where else to go," she admitted, the truth simple and raw. "I lost the cafe, the apartment, everything." Scout barked sharply from the truck, agitated by their separation or perhaps by Ethan's presence. The dog had an uncanny sense for tension, for danger. It was what had saved them both that night at the diner, when the man with the gun had come for the meager contents of the register. Ethan's gaze lingered on the dog, assessing. You planning on letting him out? Or is he going to live in your truck? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya hesitated. He doesn't do well with people. With men especially. I see. Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. And you brought him here, to my ranch. I didn't have anywhere else, she repeated, hating the desperation that crept into her voice. I can leave tomorrow. I just need... It's getting dark, he interrupted, glancing at the gathering clouds. Storm's coming in. As if on cue, a distant rumble of thunder rolled across the valley. Scout's barking intensified, frantic now. He's afraid of storms, Maya explained, turning back toward the truck. Like Rusty was, Ethan said quietly. The name of his old border collie struck Maya like a physical blow. Rusty, who'd slept at the foot of their bed. Rusty, who'd died just weeks before she'd left. Yes, she managed, throat tight. Like Rusty. Ethan pushed away from the corral, his movements deliberate, unhurried. The old cabin's empty. You can stay there tonight. It wasn't quite an invitation, but it wasn't a rejection either. For tonight, it would do. Thank you, she said, the words inadequate for the reprieve he was offering. Ethan nodded once, then added, Stay if you want. If that dog ever sleeps by the fireplace without growling, you can stay longer. The challenge hung between them, impossible as asking the moon to fall from the sky. Scout hadn't slept peacefully anywhere since she'd found him. Certainly not near a fireplace, with a strange man nearby. He won't, she said softly. Then I guess you'll be leaving tomorrow. Ethan turned and walked toward the main house, back straight, each step measured and final. The first fat raindrops began to fall as Maya returned to the truck. Scout pressed against the door, whining anxiously as thunder rumbled closer. It's okay, boy, she soothed, reaching for him. He allowed her fingers to brush his fur briefly before pulling away. Progress, of a sort. We've got shelter for tonight. As she started the truck to drive the short distance to the cabin, she watched Ethan's retreating figure through the rain-streaked windshield. He didn't look back. The cabin was small but clean, nestled among towering pines that swayed and whispered in the gathering storm. A single room with a stone fireplace, a narrow bed against one wall, a small kitchen area, and a bathroom hardly bigger than a closet. It smelled of pine and wood smoke and memories. Maya had spent her first night with Ethan in this cabin, 7 years ago. Back when Whispering Pines Ranch had belonged to his grandfather, before Ethan had inherited it and built the main house. Before everything had fallen apart. Scout refused to exit the truck, teeth bared when she opened the passenger door. Please, Scout, she pleaded as rain soaked through her jacket. It's just for tonight. But the dog pressed himself against the far door, trembling, growling warning. Exhausted and drenched, Maya finally retrieved a package of beef jerky from her bag. The smell tempted Scout enough that he allowed her to clip a leash to his collar, though he kept his distance as she led him to the cabin porch. At the doorway, he balked again. It's safe, she insisted, kneeling despite the cold rain plastering her clothes to her skin. I promise. But promises meant nothing to Scout, who had learned the hard way that humans lied, that pain followed trust, that safety was an illusion. Maya had learned the same lessons, though from different teachers. It took another 20 minutes of coaxing before Scout reluctantly entered the cabin, immediately seeking the furthest corner from the door, from the windows, from her. He curled into himself, eyes tracking every movement as Maya built a fire in the old stone hearth. Her clothes clung to her skin, cold and uncomfortable, but she didn't dare change with Scout so on edge in the unfamiliar space. Instead, she sat on the floor near the fire, giving him space, pretending not to notice how he flinched at each crack of thunder. We'll leave tomorrow, she told him softly. Find somewhere else. But where? The question haunted her as the storm raged outside. Every bridge burned, every favor called in, every resource exhausted. She had $157 to her name, a temperamental truck with 200,000 miles on it, and a dog that most people would have put down by now. And memories. So many memories in this place, rising around her like ghosts. Ethan teaching her to ride in the meadow beyond the cabin. His grandmother's hands guiding hers, as they kneaded bread dough in the main house kitchen. The proposal under the old oak tree, stars scattered above them like diamonds on velvet. The fights that came later. The miscarriage that broke something fundamental between them. The silence that grew like a living thing, feeding on their inability to bridge it. And then the accident that had nearly killed him, that had given her the excuse she needed to run. Lightning flashed, illuminating the cabin in stark white. Scout whimpered, pressing himself flatter against the floor. "It can't hurt you," Maya soothed, though she knew better than most how little such assurances meant to a heart that had learned fear as its first language. A sudden pounding at the door made them both jump. Scout leapt to his feet, hackles raised, a growl building in his chest. "Maya," Ethan's voice, raised against the storm. She moved to the door, placing herself between it and Scout. "Yes?" "Power's out in the main house. Brought you some supplies." Maya hesitated, glancing at Scout, who had backed against the wall, teeth bared, trembling. "Just a second," she called, approaching the dog slowly. "Easy, Scout, easy." She managed to grasp his collar, though he flinched at her touch. "It's okay, no one's going to hurt you." With Scout secured, she opened the door a crack. Ethan stood on the porch, rain dripping from his hat brim. A lantern in one hand, a basket in the other. "Thank you," she said, reaching for the offerings without opening the door wider. But Ethan didn't immediately release the basket. "Everything okay in there?" "Fine," she said quickly. Too quickly. His eyes narrowed slightly. "The dog giving you trouble?" Behind her, Scout's growl deepened, as if he understood the question. "He's just scared," Maya explained. "The storm. New place. He'll settle." Ethan's gaze moved past her to where Scout strained against her grip on his collar. "Doesn't look like settling to me. Looks like a dog about to bite." "He won't," she insisted, though the pressure of Scout's pulling was making her arm ache. "He's all talk." Even as she said it, Scout lunged forward, nearly breaking her grip. His teeth snapped inches from where her hand held the door. Ethan stepped back, his expression unreadable in the shadowed porch light. "That dog's dangerous, Maya." "He's not," she protested. "He's just never had anyone be kind to him." Something flickered in Ethan's eyes then. Recognition, perhaps. Or memory. "Sometimes kindness isn't enough," he said quietly. Before she could respond, he set the basket down on the porch. "Blankets, candles, some food. Should get you through the night." "Thank you," she said again, meaning it despite the tension crackling between them. He hesitated, rain still pouring around him. "Maya." "I'll be gone tomorrow," she interrupted, not wanting to hear whatever he was about to say. Not wanting his pity, or worse, his indifference. His jaw tightened. "That wasn't what I was going to say." "Then what?" The question hung between them, lost in a crash of thunder. Scout barked sharply, straining forward again. "Get some rest," Ethan said finally, turning away. "We'll talk in the morning." As his figure disappeared into the rainy darkness, Maya closed the door, releasing Scout's collar. The dog immediately retreated to his corner, shaking with fear or adrenaline or both. "That went well," she muttered, retrieving the basket from the porch. Inside, she found thick wool blankets, a dozen candles, matches, a thermos of coffee, sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, and, unexpectedly, a worn leather dog collar, much smaller than Scout's current one. Rusty's collar. She recognized the braided pattern, the tarnished tag. Ethan had kept it all these years. Tears burned behind her eyes as she set it aside. A peace offering? A reminder? She couldn't tell. The storm raged through the night, rattling the cabin windows, sending shadows dancing across the walls. Scout remained, vigilant in his corner, refusing food, refusing comfort, eyes fixed on the door, as if expecting danger to burst through at any moment. Maya dozed fitfully on the narrow bed, one hand dangling toward the floor in case Scout needed reassurance. But he never came closer, never sought her touch. Sometime near dawn the storm passed, leaving behind a hushed, expectant silence. Maya rose stiff and weary to find Scout still in his corner, watching her with those amber eyes that had seen too much hardship. "Morning, boy," she said softly, approaching him with slow, deliberate movements. He allowed her within a few feet before his lip curled in warning. "Still not friends, huh?" She sighed, running a hand through her tangled hair. Outside, the world dripped and glistened in the early light. They needed to leave as promised. Back to the road, to uncertainty, to the dwindling options that had driven her here in the first place. But first, Scout needed to eat, to relieve himself. He needed to trust her enough for those basic necessities, at least. It took nearly an hour to coax him outside, another to get him back in when a ranch hand's distant shout startled him into flight. By the time she'd recaptured him, secured him in the cabin, and made her way to the truck to retrieve their meager belongings, the morning was half gone. And Ethan was waiting for her, leaning against her truck, arms crossed over his chest. "Thought you'd be gone by now," he said as she approached. Maya pushed damp hair from her face. Scout had other ideas. Ethan's gaze moved toward the cabin, where Scout's face was visible in the window, watching them. "Dog like that needs training, professional training." "I know," she admitted. "I've tried. He won't let anyone near him but me, and even that's—" She trailed off, unwilling to admit how limited her control over the animal really was. "Why keep him, then?" The question was direct, without judgment. Typical Ethan, cutting to the heart of things. Maya hesitated. "He saved my life," she said finally. "There was a robbery at the diner where I worked. Guy had a gun. Scout." She swallowed hard, the memory still fresh, still terrifying. "Scout got between us. Took a bullet meant for me." Understanding dawned in Ethan's eyes. "That why he doesn't trust?" "No," Maya shook her head. "He was like that when I found him. The vet thinks he was used as a bait dog in fights. He has scars." Her voice broke slightly. "He has so many scars, Ethan." Something softened in his expression. "So you took in a broken animal that you can't control, that might hurt you, that no one else wanted." "Yes." "Some things never change," he said quietly, and she knew he wasn't just talking about Scout anymore. A tense silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken history. "We'll be out of your hair soon," Maya said finally, reaching for her bag in the truck bed. "Just need to gather our things." Ethan straightened, uncrossing his arms. "You said you lost everything." "The cafe, your apartment." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway, shame burning her cheeks. "Bad investment. Partner who wasn't what he seemed." The usual story. "The usual story," Ethan repeated, a strange note in his voice. "And now, you've got nowhere to go." "I'll figure something out," she said, lifting her chin. "I always do." "Like you figured out leaving without a word 3 years ago?" The accusation struck like a slap. "That's not fair." "None of it was fair, Maya." For the first time, emotion cracked through his careful control. "You were just gone. No explanation, no goodbye. Just a note saying not to follow you." "You were hurt," she protested. "The accident." "I was healing," he corrected. "And then I wasn't, because you weren't there." Maya looked away, unable to face the raw honesty in his eyes. "I couldn't stay. Not after everything." "You mean after we lost the baby," he said quietly. "After you decided it was your fault and nothing I said could convince you otherwise." She flinched. They'd never talked about it so directly, even before she'd left. The pain had been too immense, the gulf between their ways of grieving too vast. "I didn't come here to rehash the past," she said, voice tight. "Then, why did you come, Maya?" "Really?" The truth rose in her throat, bitter as bile. "Because you're the only person who might understand why I can't give up on him." She nodded toward the cabin, toward Scout. "Why, I can't just walk away, even when everyone says I should." Ethan's gaze held hers for a long moment. She'd forgotten how it felt, being truly seen by him. How disarming, how terrifying. "The blue cabin's empty," he said finally. "The one by the creek. It's bigger than this one. Has a fenced yard." Maya blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "For the dog," he clarified. "Somewhere secure for him to be outside without running off or getting into trouble." "I don't understand." Ethan sighed, running a hand over his face. "I'm offering you a place to stay. For a while. Until you figure things out." "Why would you do that?" she asked, suspicion edging her voice. "After everything," his eyes met hers, steady and clear. "Because that dog isn't the only one who deserves a second chance." The words hung between them, weighted with meanings neither was ready to explore. "Stay," he said again, softer. "If he ever sleeps by the fireplace without growling, then maybe we'll both know there's hope for him. For all of us." Maya looked toward the cabin, where Scout watched them with unblinking intensity. An impossible challenge, a slender thread of possibility. "Okay," she said finally. "We'll stay." For a little while. Something like relief flickered across Ethan's face. Gone so quickly she might have imagined it. "Blue cabin's ready whenever you are." Mrs. Carson left some food in the fridge. "Mrs. Carson?" Maya couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. "She's still here?" "Some things don't change," Ethan said with the ghost of a smile. "She'll be glad to see you. Always said you'd be back someday." "She did?" "Said you left too much of yourself here to stay away forever." He turned to go, then paused. "Need help with your bags?" Maya shook her head. "I've got it. And Scout doesn't like strangers." "I remember." Ethan touched the brim of his hat in a gesture so familiar, it made her heart ache. "See you around, Maya." As she watched him walk away, back straight, steps measured, Maya felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness. They were nowhere near that yet, not even hope. But possibility. A door left slightly ajar that had been locked shut for 3 years. In the cabin, Scout whined softly, sensing her turmoil. "It's okay, boy," she called to him. "We're staying. For now." And for now, that would have to be enough. Dawn broke over Whispering Pines Ranch, painting the mountains gold and crimson. Maya stood on the blue cabin's porch, coffee mug warming her hands against the morning chill. Scout lay at her feet, not touching her, but closer than he'd been yesterday. Progress measured in inches, not miles. The blue cabin was indeed larger than the one they'd stayed in last night. 2 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, a living room with a stone fireplace similar to the other cabins. The fenced yard was a blessing. Scout needed space to move, to explore safely without the risk of bolting into the wilderness that surrounded the ranch. Mrs. Carson, Ethan's housekeeper since before Maya had known him, had indeed stocked the refrigerator. She'd also left a note in her familiar spidery handwriting. "Welcome home, dear. About time." Home. The word caught in Maya's throat, like a fishbone. This place had been home once, but she'd surrendered that right when she'd left without saying goodbye. Movement caught her eye. Ethan, emerging from the barn, leading a dappled gray mare toward the corral. Man and horse moved together with quiet purpose, a rhythm born of long familiarity. His lanky frame, the confident set of his shoulders, the gentle hand on the horse's neck, all so achingly familiar that Maya had to look away. When she glanced back, Ethan had stopped. He was watching her from across the distance, the mare waiting patiently beside him. For a moment, They just stared at each other, morning light gilding them both. Then Ethan raised his hand. Not quite a wave, more an acknowledgement. She returned the gesture, uncertain what it meant. Scout growled low in his throat, sensing her disquiet. "It's okay," she told him, though nothing felt okay. Being here, seeing Ethan again, the gnawing uncertainty of what came next. By mid-morning, Maya had unpacked their few belongings and begun exploring the boundaries of their temporary sanctuary. The blue cabin sat nestled among pines, a small creek burbling behind it. The fenced yard extended to the water's edge, giving Scout access to the cool stream. The main ranch house stood visible in the distance, its weathered wood and wide porch just as she remembered. Scout followed her warily as she walked the perimeter of the yard, his body tense, alert for threats. Every sound made him freeze. The distant whinny of horses, the call of a ranch hand, the rumble of a tractor. Starting up. "No one's going to hurt you here," she told him, crouching to his level, careful not to make direct eye contact, a challenge he'd interpret as threat. "This might be good for us both. Fresh air. Space to breathe." The dog regarded her skeptically, as if he'd heard such promises before and found them wanting. A knock at the front gate made them both start. Mrs. Carson stood there, plump and practical in her floral apron, gray hair twisted into its perpetual bun. "Thought I'd come see you properly," the older woman called, eyeing Scout with interest. "And meet your companion." Scout immediately backed away, teeth bared in silent warning. "He's not friendly," Maya cautioned, moving between them. "Best to keep your distance." Mrs. Carson clucked her tongue. "Reminds me of someone else when they first came to the ranch. Wild-eyed and ready to bolt at the first sign of kindness." Heat rose to Maya's cheeks. "Wasn't that bad." "Weren't you, though?" Mrs. Carson's eyes twinkled. "Jumped like a startled colt whenever anyone spoke to you. Wouldn't take so much as a muffin without looking like you expected to be charged for it." Maya couldn't help smiling at the memory. She'd been 19, broke and stranded with a broken-down car when Ethan had found her on the side of the road. His offer of a temporary job at the ranch had been a lifeline she'd been too proud and too suspicious to grasp easily. "I got better," she defended. "So will he." Mrs. Carson nodded toward Scout, who had retreated to the porch steps, still watching them intently. "Just needs time and patience, and maybe some of my beef stew. Works wonders on wild things." As if summoned by the mention of food, Ethan appeared at the gate, a cloth-covered basket in his hands. "Brought lunch," he said, gaze moving from Maya to Mrs. Carson, "but I see you beat me to it." "Great minds," the housekeeper said cheerfully, reaching for the gate latch. Scout's growl deepened as Ethan stepped into the yard. The dog's hackles rose, his stance shifting to something more threatening. "Scout," Maya warned, moving toward him. "It's okay." But the dog wasn't listening. His focus had locked onto Ethan with laser intensity, muscles bunched and ready to spring. Ethan froze, assessing the situation with the calm that had always been his hallmark. "Maybe I should go," he suggested. Voice level. "Try again another time." "Nonsense," Mrs. Carson declared. "The dog needs to get used to people. Can't have him terrorizing the ranch." Scout barked sharply, the sound like a gunshot in the quiet yard. "Really, Mrs. C, I think," Maya began. "Now you listen here," the older woman said, but whether she was addressing Maya, Ethan, or the dog remained unclear. She set her basket down and moved forward with surprising swiftness for a woman in her 70s. Before Maya could stop her, Mrs. Carson had positioned herself directly in Scout's line of sight. The dog's growl faltered momentarily in confusion. "That's enough of that," Mrs. Carson told him firmly, in the same tone she'd used on generations of ranch hands, visiting children, and recalcitrant livestock. "No one here is going to hurt you, but I won't have that kind of behavior either." Scout's ears flattened against his skull, but remarkably, his growl subsided to a low rumble. "Good boy," Mrs. Carson said, as if the dog had offered a proper greeting instead of a threatening display. "Now I've brought chicken sandwiches and apple pie, and you're all going to sit and eat like civilized creatures." She marched to the porch and began unpacking her basket, pointedly ignoring Scout, who watched her with wary bewilderment. Maya and Ethan exchanged glances, a moment of shared amazement that almost almost bridged the chasm between them. "She hasn't changed," Maya murmured. "Never will," Ethan agreed. "Too stubborn to bend, too tough to break." The description could have applied to several beings currently in the yard. Lunch was a strained affair, with Scout refusing to relax despite Mrs. Carson's ongoing one-sided conversation with him. The dog remained at the bottom of the porch steps, poised for flight or fight, while the humans ate at the small table Maya had dragged outside. "Ranch looks good," Maya offered, searching for neutral ground. "The north pasture especially." Ethan nodded, some tension easing from his shoulders at the safe topic. "Expanded it last year. Got 30 head of cattle now, besides the horses." 30? That's amazing. Would be 40 if that wolf pack hadn't gotten through the fence last winter, Mrs. Carson added, passing Maya another sandwich. "Eat, dear. You're thin as a rail." "Wolves?" Maya glanced toward the tree line with new apprehension. "They keep to the high country mostly," Ethan assured her. "That was an unusual winter. Heavy snow drove them down looking for food." Maya's gaze moved to Scout. "I'll need to be careful with him, if he ran off." "He'd be in danger," Ethan finished. "Yes." Another silence fell, filled with the sound of wind through pine needles and Scout's occasional low growl when anyone moved too suddenly. "How long will you stay?" Mrs. Carson asked bluntly, ignoring Ethan's warning look. Maya traced the grain of the wooden table with her fingertip. "I'm not sure. Until I figure out what's next, I guess." "And what would that be, dear?" "Mrs. C," Ethan interjected. "Maybe that's enough questions for now." The older woman waved him off. "She's a grown woman, Ethan. She can speak for herself." Maya smiled despite herself. Mrs. Carson had always treated her as capable, even when she'd felt anything but. "It's okay," she told Ethan. "I don't know what's next. The cafe was everything. All my savings, all my plans." She swallowed hard. "I trusted the wrong person." Again. The implication hung in the air, unavoidable. The wrong person. Like she'd trusted Ethan, once upon a time, before grief and fear had corroded that trust from the inside out. "Business partner?" Ethan asked carefully. Maya nodded. "James. He was." She hesitated. "Charming. Convincing. Said all the right things. I didn't look closely enough at the books until it was too late." "Ran off with the money," Mrs. Carson guessed, her expression thunderous. "Men like that should be horsewhipped." "No," Maya said quietly. "He died. Car accident. Left behind a mountain of debt and a bunch of creditors looking for someone to blame." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And they came after you." "I was the only one left," she confirmed. "Tried to keep the cafe running to pay it off bit by bit, but—" She shrugged, the defeat still fresh and bitter. "Wasn't enough. Then the landlord doubled the rent, and that was that." "And the dog?" Mrs. Carson prompted. "Where does he fit in?" Maya glanced at Scout, who had settled into a watchful crouch, amber eyes never leaving the group on the porch. "He showed up behind the cafe one night, skin and bones, covered in scars. Wouldn't let anyone near him." She smiled faintly. "Took me 2 weeks just to get him to eat food while I was in sight." "And now?" Ethan asked, his gaze assessing the distance Scout maintained, the tension in the animal's body. "Now he lets me exist in the same space. Doesn't trust me completely, but he's learning." Maya met Ethan's eyes. "He's had it rough, needs time." Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Understanding, perhaps. Or recognition. "Time we can give," he said quietly. "Can't promise much else." It was more than she'd expected. More than she deserved after the way she'd left. Mrs. Carson cleared her throat. "Well, I should get back to the house. Bread dough won't need itself." She gathered her things, fixing Maya with a pointed look. "You come by for dinner tonight. Both of you." "Scout won't," Maya began. "Bring something that smells like him," Mrs. Carson instructed. "A blanket or toy. Put it on the porch. He'll be fine in the yard while you eat." With that, she departed, leaving no room for argument. "Does she still think she runs the world?" Maya asked, watching the older woman march back toward the main house. "Just this corner of it," Ethan replied, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "And she's usually right." Another silence fell, less strained than before. "Thank you," Maya said finally, "for letting us stay. You didn't have to." Ethan stood, gathering the remains of his lunch. "No," he agreed, "I didn't." He hesitated, then added, "The training offer stands. For the dog. I know someone who works with traumatized animals. Military service dogs, fighting ring rescues, cases everyone else gives up on." Hope flared in Maya's chest. "Really? They could help Scout?" "Maybe." Ethan's tone was cautious. "No guarantees with a dog that damaged. But Jake has a gift." "Jake Reeves?" Maya remembered the name. "Your buddy from high school?" Ethan nodded. "Served 3 tours in Afghanistan with a K-9 unit. Came back different, like a lot of them do. Started working with problem dogs. Says they understand each other." Maya glanced at Scout, who had begun to pace restlessly at the far end of the yard. "He won't let strangers touch him. Won't even take food from anyone but me." "Jake doesn't touch them at first," Ethan explained. "Has his own methods. Unusual, but effective." He shrugged. "Just a thought." "I'd try anything at this point," Maya admitted. "I'm running out of options for him." "I'll call Jake," Ethan promised, moving toward the gate. "See if he can come by." "Ethan?" Maya called as he reached for the latch. He paused, looking back at her. "Why are you helping us? After the way I left?" He considered the question, head tilted slightly, in that way she remembered, like he was listening to something beyond the words she'd spoken. "Because running away doesn't solve anything," he said finally. "You came back. That took courage." "Or desperation," she countered. "Sometimes they look the same from the outside." His eyes, blue as the Montana sky, held hers. "See you at dinner." As he walked away, Scout approached Maya cautiously, pressing his nose against her hand in a rare gesture of affection. "Making friends already?" she asked the dog softly. "Must be something in the mountain air." That evening, following Mrs. Carson's instructions, Maya placed Scout's worn blanket on the main house porch, then secured him in the fenced yard with fresh water and the remainder of their beef jerky stash. The dog watched her betrayal with solemn eyes, making no attempt to follow as she walked toward the house where lights glowed warm against the gathering dusk. The main house was just as she remembered, spacious but comfortable, with exposed beams and a stone fireplace large enough to stand in. The kitchen smelled of fresh bread and roasting meat, the large oak table set for 3. "Right on time," Mrs. Carson approved, wiping her hands on her apron. "Ethan's washing up. Sit, sit." Maya took her old place at the table automatically, then froze when she realized what she'd done. Third chair on the right, where she'd sat for countless meals during the years she'd lived here. Where she'd planned her wedding, grieved her loss, made the decision to leave. Mrs. Carson, noticing her distress, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's still your chair, dear. Always will be." Before Maya could respond, Ethan entered, hair damp from the shower, wearing a clean flannel shirt and jeans. He hesitated almost imperceptibly when he saw her sitting in her old spot, something flickering behind his eyes too quickly to read. "Dog settled?" he asked, taking his own seat across from her. Maya nodded. "As much as he ever is. Left the gate unlatched, though, in case he panics and tries to escape," Ethan finished. "Smart." "He won't get far," Mrs. Carson declared, placing a steaming platter of pot roast on the table. "Animals know better than people sometimes." "No, when they've found somewhere safe." Dinner progressed with careful conversation, navigating around the jagged rocks of their shared past. Mrs. Carson carried most of it, updating Maya on local gossip, the changes to the town 15 miles east, the new minister at the church who rode a motorcycle. It was almost normal, almost like the hundreds of dinners they'd shared before. Except for the careful distance in Ethan's eyes, the way he never quite looked directly at her, the absence of casual touches that had once been as natural as breathing. "Jake can come tomorrow," Ethan announced as they finished apple cobbler. "Said he's curious about your dog." That's wonderful," Maya stammered, caught off guard by how quickly he'd arranged it. "But I should warn you, Scout's worse with men than women, if Jake expects to make progress right away." "Jake doesn't expect anything," Ethan said. "That's why he's good at what he does." Mrs. Carson began clearing plates with the efficiency of long practice. "You two go onto the porch. I'll bring coffee." "I should check on Scout," Maya protested. "In a minute," the older woman insisted. "Give yourselves a moment to talk without me hovering." Before either could object, she had shooed them toward the front door, the domestic equivalent of a border collie, herding reluctant sheep. The porch swing creaked gently as they settled on it, a careful foot of space between them. The evening was cool, stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. From the yard, they could hear Scout's occasional whine. "He sounds okay," Ethan observed. "Not panicking." "No," Maya agreed, surprised. "That's unusual for him." Silence stretched between them, not entirely uncomfortable. "Why'd you keep Rusty's collar?" The question escaped before Maya could reconsider it. "I saw it in the basket you brought to the cabin." Ethan's hands, resting on his knees, tightened slightly. "Couldn't bring myself to get rid of it," he admitted. "Too many memories." "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I know how much you loved that dog." "Not just the dog," Ethan's voice was low, "meant only for her. The time. Us. Everything." The simple honesty of it stole her breath. "I shouldn't have left the way I did," she whispered, without saying goodbye. "You deserved better." "Yes," he agreed, no accusation in the word, just acknowledgement. "I did." Another silence, weighted with things unsaid. "When I heard about the accident," Maya began hesitantly, "they said you might not walk again." Ethan's laugh held no humor. "They said a lot of things, most of them wrong. But you were hurt," she insisted. "Badly hurt. Broken leg in 3 places. Fractured pelvis. Punctured lung." He recited the injuries like items on a grocery list. "Nothing that couldn't heal with time. They told me." "They told you what they thought you needed to hear." He interrupted gently. "What would justify your running?" The truth of it struck her like a physical blow. She'd wanted a reason, an excuse. The doctors had provided one. "I was a coward," she admitted, the words raw in her throat. "You were grieving," Ethan corrected. "We both were. Just in different ways." From the yard came a sudden bark. Scout, alerting to something in the darkness. Both tensed, listening. "Probably just a raccoon," Ethan said after a moment. "They raid the compost pile this time of year." But Maya was already standing, instinctively responding to Scout's distress. "I should go to him." Ethan rose as well. "I'll walk with you." The night had deepened around them, the path to the blue cabin visible only by starlight. Scout's barking continued, more urgent now. "Something's wrong." Maya quickened her pace, Ethan matching her stride for stride. As they approached the yard, a dark shape detached itself from the shadows near the fence line. Too large for a raccoon. Too silent for a ranch hand. "Wolf," Ethan breathed, catching Maya's arm. "Stay behind me." Scout's barking had reached a fevered pitch, his body a tense line at the opposite side of the fence, facing the intruder with reckless courage. "Scout," Maya called, fear making her voice sharp. "Come!" But the dog was beyond hearing, focused entirely on the predator that circled the perimeter of his territory. Ethan moved forward slowly, deliberately placing himself between Maya and the wolf. "Get to the porch," he instructed. "I'll distract it while you get Scout." "No," she protested. "It's too dangerous." "Maya." Her name from his lips was both command and plea. "Trust me, just this once." Trust. The thing that had broken between them long before she'd left. The thing Scout couldn't offer, that she'd struggled to rebuild in her own heart. "Okay," she whispered, and meant it. Ethan moved forward with the confident stride of a man who had faced down wild things before. He clapped his hands sharply, shouting. The wolf hesitated, assessing this new threat. Maya used the distraction to edge towards Scout, who remained fixated on the wolf, unaware of the danger he was courting with his defiance. "Scout," she called again, softer now. "Come here, boy." The dog's ear twitched in her direction, but his stance didn't waver. The wolf, deciding that Ethan presented more immediate concern than the dog, turned its attention toward the man. Its growl raised the hair on Maya's arms. "Hey!" Ethan shouted again, louder this time. "Get out of here!" The standoff stretched, taut as a wire. Then, with deliberate slowness, the wolf backed away, yellow eyes gleaming in the darkness. One step, two, three, until it turned and loped into the shadows, disappearing as silently as it had come. The breath Maya hadn't realized she was holding escaped in a rush. "Ethan, it's gone," he confirmed, though he continued to scan the darkness. For now. Scout's barking had subsided to a low growl, his body still rigid with alertness. "Scout," Maya tried again, approaching the fence. "It's okay now." To her surprise, the dog turned toward her voice, some of the tension leaving his powerful frame. Then, in a move that left her breathless with its significance, Scout trotted to the gate where she stood, not touching her, not fully trusting, but acknowledging her as a source of safety in a moment of danger. "Good boy," she whispered, fighting tears. "Such a good, brave boy." Ethan approached cautiously, keeping a respectful distance from the still agitated dog. "He did well," he observed, stood his ground, protected his territory. "And us," Maya added, the realization dawning. "He was trying to protect us too." Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Maybe there's hope for him yet. The words echoed his challenge from the day before. Stay if he ever sleeps by the fireplace without growling. Scout had a long way to go before that milestone. But tonight, something had changed. A first step on a path neither had believed possible. "Come inside," Maya invited, surprising herself. "Just for a minute. Let Scout see you're not a threat." Ethan hesitated, glancing at the dog who watched him with wary alertness. "You sure?" "No," she admitted with a small laugh, "but we have to start somewhere." As they moved toward the cabin door, Scout following at a cautious distance, Maya felt something unfurl in her chest. Not forgiveness. They were nowhere near that yet. Not even hope exactly. But possibility. A door once locked shut, now standing slightly ajar. A week passed at Whispering Pines Ranch. 7 days of cautious progress, of Scout gradually allowing Ethan to exist in the same space without immediate growling. 7 nights of Maya lying awake, listening to the dog's restless movements around the cabin, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake in coming back. But the mornings held something else. Possibility, blooming like the wildflowers that dotted the meadow beyond the cabin. Scout had begun waiting by the door each dawn, eager for their walks along the creek, his amber eyes more alert to the beauty around them than the dangers he'd once seen everywhere. Jake Reeves had come as promised, a tall man with a soldier's bearing softened by kind eyes. He'd sat on the ground 10 feet from Scout for 2 hours, never approaching, never even looking directly at the dog. Just existing, calm and unthreatening, occasionally tossing treats in Scout's general direction. "He's not what I expected," Maya had admitted to Ethan after Jake left, promising to return in 2 days. "What did you expect?" Ethan had asked, watching Scout investigate the place where Jake had sat, sniffing curiously. Someone more forceful, I guess. The way he handled those military dogs. Ethan had smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Jake says force never healed anything. Not dogs, not people. The wisdom in that had stayed with Maya, surfacing now as she stood by the corral, watching Ethan work with a young colt. Scout lay in the shade nearby, not relaxed but not panicking either, his eyes tracking Ethan's gentle movements with the horse. "Easy, Firestorm," Ethan murmured, stroking the colt's neck as he carefully fitted a halter. "Nobody's going to rush you." The animal trembled but allowed the touch, dark eyes wide, nostrils flaring. "He's beautiful," Maya called, careful to keep her voice low. Ethan glanced up, a flash of surprise crossing his features, as if he'd forgotten she was there. "He's getting there. Born too early, almost didn't make it. His mama rejected him." Scout's ears pricked forward at the sound of their voices, but he remained where he was, watching. "How'd you save him?" Maya asked, moving closer to the fence. "Bottle-fed him every 2 hours. Slept in the stable for 3 weeks." Ethan shrugged, as if this extraordinary commitment was nothing unusual. Couldn't let him go without a fighting chance. The words hung between them, weighted with unspoken parallels. Maya thought of Scout, of the nights she'd spent sleeping on the floor beside his bed at the apartment, of the trust slowly built through consistent care, of Ethan himself who'd given her a job when she was stranded, a home when she had none, a second chance when she'd done nothing to deserve it. "Some things are worth saving," she said softly, eyes on the colt who now leaned into Ethan's touch. "Even when it's hard. Especially then." Ethan met her gaze, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "Yes," he agreed simply. "They are." The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility, until Scout rose suddenly, hackles rising as a truck rumbled up the driveway toward the main house. "That'll be Jake," Ethan said, checking his watch. "Right on time," Maya nodded, turning to call Scout to her side. The dog came reluctantly, body tense as they made their way toward the house. This would be Scout's 3rd session with Jake, and though progress was glacially slow, it was undeniable. Yesterday, the dog had taken a treat directly from Jake's outstretched palm, a milestone that had left Maya fighting tears. "He's doing better," she told Scout as they walked, trying to project a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "Jake's helping you remember that not all humans are monsters." The dog glanced up at her, amber eyes reflecting a wariness that had begun to soften at the edges. Not trust, not yet, but perhaps the foundation for it. Jake waited for them on the porch, his posture deliberately casual, gaze averted from Scout as they approached. The strategy had confused Maya at first, until Jake explained that direct eye contact was a challenge to a traumatized dog, a threat that triggered defense mechanisms too deeply ingrained to easily overcome. "Morning," he greeted them, voice pitched low and calm. "Beautiful day for some quiet time." That was how he referred to the sessions. Quiet time, not training, not therapy, just two beings sharing space without expectations. "He remembered you were coming," Maya said, noting how Scout's growl had subsided to a low rumble. "Got agitated when we heard your truck." Jake nodded, still not looking directly at either of them. Anticipation, not always bad, means his brain is working ahead, planning, not just reacting. He patted the porch floor beside him. "Let's see where we're at today." The session unfolded with the same patient rhythm as before. Jake sitting quietly, occasionally speaking in that low, even tone. Scout gradually settling, watchful but not panicked. Maya observing from a distance Ethan had joined her after putting the colt away, his presence a steady comfort at her side. "He's good," she murmured, watching Jake offer an open hand to Scout, who sniffed it cautiously before backing away. "Where did you find him?" "He found me," Ethan replied. "After you left. I was in a dark place, drinking too much, letting the ranch go to hell." He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture she remembered from whenever he was uncomfortable. Jake showed up one day with a half-wild Mustang he'd rescued from slaughter, said he needed somewhere to keep it while he worked with it. Maya could imagine it, Ethan at his lowest, Jake arriving with purposeful distraction, the kind of friendship that saved without announcing its intentions. The Mustang was worse than Scout, Ethan continued. Would try to kill anyone who came near it. Jake spent 6 months living in a tent in the pasture with that horse, just existing alongside it. By the end, that horse would follow him anywhere. On the porch, Scout had edged closer to Jake, close enough that the man could have touched him if he'd reached out. But Jake remained still, patient, allowing the dog to set the pace. "That's it," Jake encouraged softly as Scout sniffed his knee. "Nothing to worry about. Just two beings sharing some quiet." Something in the gentleness of it made Maya's throat tighten. How long had it been since anyone had shown Scout such patience? How long since she herself had experienced it? "I'm sorry I wasn't here," she said suddenly, the words escaping before she could reconsider them. "When you were in that dark place." Ethan's gaze remained on Scout and Jake, but she felt him tense beside her. "You had your own demons to fight." "That's no excuse, isn't it?" His voice held no accusation, just genuine curiosity. "We were drowning, Maya. Both of us. Sometimes the only way to survive is to swim for shore alone." The wisdom of it struck her, unexpected and profound. She'd been so consumed by guilt for leaving, for the miscarriage, for failing to be what Ethan needed, that she'd never considered her departure might have been necessary for both their survival. "But I never reached back," she said softly. "Once I got to shore, I never threw you a line." Ethan finally looked at her then, blue eyes clear in the morning light. "Maybe you weren't on solid ground yourself yet." Before she could respond, Scout did something extraordinary. He lay down beside Jake, not touching him, but close enough that the man could have stroked his fur with minimal effort. The posture wasn't relaxed. Scout's muscles remained tense, ready for flight, but it was a deliberate choice to be vulnerable in the presence of a man he'd once feared. "Well now," Jake said quietly, his voice carrying to where they stood. "That's something, isn't it? That's trust-taking root. Trust-taking root." The phrase echoed in Maya's mind as she watched Scout. This dog who had every reason to fear humans, choosing to believe that Jake meant him no harm. If Scout could find that courage after all he'd endured, what was her excuse? "Ethan," she began, not sure what would follow, only knowing she needed to speak, but a shout from the barn interrupted her. "Miller! Phone call from the vet. Says it's urgent." Ethan's straightened body immediately alert. "The mare," he said. She was due to foal any day. "Must be starting." "Go," Maya urged. "We're fine here." He hesitated only briefly before striding toward the house, pausing to call back. "Jake." "We're good," the trainer assured him. "Take care of your business." As Ethan disappeared into the house, Jake beckoned Maya to join them on the porch. She approached cautiously, mindful of disrupting Scout's fragile calm. "He's making progress," Jake observed as she settled on the steps. "Faster than I expected." "Really?" Maya couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. "It seems so slow." Jake's smile was gentle. "Healing usually is, but it's happening. Watch his eyes. They're softer, less hunted." Maya studied Scout, trying to see what Jake saw. The dog had maintained his position near the trainer, but his gaze kept returning to her, as if checking that she remained safe, that they were still connected, despite the presence of this man between them. "What happened to him?" Jake asked. "Before you found him." Maya sighed, the familiar ache returning whenever she considered Scout's past. "Not sure exactly. The vet thought dogfighting. He has scars." She swallowed hard. "Lots of them. Under his fur." Jake nodded, unsurprised. Figured as much. The way he holds himself, always protecting his throat and belly. Classic signs. "Will he ever really trust people?" "Some people," Jake corrected. "He already trusts you, and he's deciding about me and Ethan. That's progress." "But will he ever be?" Maya struggled to find the right word. "Normal?" Jake considered this, his weathered face thoughtful. "Define normal. If you mean, will he be like a dog that's never known cruelty?" "No, those experiences are part of him now, shaped him." He gestured toward Scout, who had closed his eyes but remained alert, ears twitching at every sound. But can he learn to live with his past without being controlled by it? Yes, I believe he can. The door opened behind them, and Ethan emerged, his expression a mix of excitement and concern. Mare's foaling, but there's complications. Vet's on his way, but it'll be at least an hour. Need help? Jake asked, already rising. Ethan nodded, relief evident in his face. Could use an extra pair of hands. I'll come too, Maya offered, standing quickly. Ethan hesitated. What about Scout? They all looked at the dog, who had tensed at the sudden movement and change in energy. Bring him, Jake suggested. Let him watch from outside the stall. Good experience, seeing humans work together, help another creature. He might panic, Maya warned. If there's blood, or the mare makes noise. Might, Jake agreed. Or might surprise you. Only one way to find out. The decision made, they moved quickly toward the barn, Scout following at Maya's heels with uncharacteristic attentiveness, as if sensing the urgency of their mission. The large red structure loomed ahead, its wide doors standing open to the afternoon sun. Inside, the familiar sense of hay, leather, and horses wrapped around Maya like a forgotten embrace. How many hours had she spent here, learning to groom the gentle quarter horses, helping Ethan repair tack, watching summer storms from the hayloft doorway. The memories rushed back, bittersweet in their clarity. Scout hesitated at the threshold, nose working overtime, ears flattened against his skull. It's okay, Maya encouraged, crouching to his level. Just new smells. You're safe. After a moment's consideration, the dog edged forward, staying close to her leg as they entered the cool dimness of the barn. From a stall at the far end came the unmistakable sounds of an animal in distress. The mare, moving restlessly, her breathing labored. There you are, Mrs. Carson's voice called from the stall. The elderly woman stood beside the pregnant mare, her hand steady on the animal's neck. Poor girl's having a hard time. Ethan moved immediately to the horse's head, murmuring reassurances as he checked her condition. Foal's positioned wrong, he explained, voice tight with concern. Vet thinks it's a breech. Maya's heart sank. A breech birth was dangerous for both mare and foal, often fatal without swift intervention. What can we do? She asked, approaching the stall cautiously, Scout a shadow at her heels. Keep her calm until Doc Hernandez gets here, Ethan replied, stroking the mare's neck. Help her stay on her feet if possible. Once she goes down, it gets more complicated. The mare, Willow, Maya remembered, rolled her eyes, showing the whites in fear and pain. Her sides heaved with the effort of standing, legs trembling. Scout whined softly, pressing closer to Maya's leg. It's okay, she soothed automatically, though whether she was reassuring the dog or herself remained unclear. For the next 30 minutes, they worked as a seamless team. Ethan at Willow's head, Jake supporting her flank, Mrs. Carson preparing clean towels and warm water, Maya fetching supplies and keeping Scout from underfoot. The dog watched it all with wary fascination, gradually relaxing enough to settle in a corner of the barn, amber eyes tracking every movement. When Willow finally sank to the straw-covered floor, unable to remain standing, Ethan knelt beside her without hesitation. Easy, girl, he murmured. We've got you. Maya had forgotten this about him. The absolute calm he projected in crisis, the steady hands that never seemed to falter. She'd seen it when her car had broken down all those years ago, when Mrs. Carson had fallen and broken her wrist, when they'd lost the baby and she'd been hysterical with grief and guilt. The memory of that night hit her with unexpected force, Ethan holding her as she sobbed, his own tears falling silently, his voice hoarse with emotion but never breaking as he assured her it wasn't her fault, that they would survive this, that they would find their way through together. Except they hadn't found their way through together. She'd pulled away, built walls around her grief, blamed herself despite his assurances. And when his accident had given her the perfect excuse, she'd run rather than face the possibility of more loss, more pain. Maya, Ethan's voice broke through her thoughts. Need you here. She moved forward automatically, kneeling beside him at the mare's head. What can I do? Keep her focused on you, he instructed, rolling up his sleeves. Doc's still 20 minutes out. We can't wait that long. Understanding dawned with cold clarity. You're going to try to turn the foal? Ethan nodded grimly. No choice. She's exhausted, and the foal's heart rate is dropping. It was dangerous, for the mare, for the foal, and for Ethan if the frightened horse lashed out. But the alternative was losing them both. I'm here, Maya assured him, positioning herself near Willow's head, stroking the mare's sweat-dampened neck. Whatever you need. Jake moved to help Ethan, their movements coordinated with the efficiency of men who had worked together before. Mrs. Carson stood ready with towels and a basin of antiseptic solution. And Scout did something remarkable. He approached slowly, cautiously, coming to lie beside Maya, his body a warm presence against her leg. Not hiding, not cowering. Supporting. Good boy, she whispered, fighting tears. Such a good, brave boy. What followed was a blur of tense moments, of Ethan's focused determination, of the mare's pained whinnies, of Jake's steady presence. When the vet finally arrived, he found them blood-smeared and exhausted, but victorious. The foal delivered, small and wobbly but alive, already nursing from its equally exhausted mother. Looks like you didn't need me after all, Doc Hernandez observed, kneeling to examine the pair. Good work, Miller. Ethan, slumped against the stall wall, managed a tired smile. Had good help. Maya felt the weight of his gaze and looked up to meet it. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement, perhaps. Recognition of what they had accomplished together, of the teamwork that had once been the foundation of their relationship. You two go get cleaned up, Mrs. Carson instructed, shooing them toward the door. Jake and I will help the doc finish here. Outside, the afternoon had mellowed toward evening, golden light slanting across the ranch yard. Maya's legs felt rubbery with adrenaline and relief as they made their way toward the house, Scout trotting between them like he belonged there. He did well, Ethan observed, nodding toward the dog. No panic, no aggression, just stayed by your side through all of it. I know, Maya marveled. I've never seen him like that. So steady. Had a good example to follow, Ethan said quietly, and she knew he wasn't just talking about her. They reached the porch steps and stopped by mutual, unspoken agreement, neither quite ready, to end this moment of shared accomplishment. You saved them, Maya said, turning to face him. That mare and foal would have died without you. Ethan shrugged, embarrassed by the praise. Did what needed doing. Same as you would. No, she insisted. What you did in there. That was special, Ethan. Not everyone could have remained so calm, so focused. He looked away, but not before she caught the flash of pleasure in his eyes at her words. Speaking of calm and focused, he deflected, your dog surprised everyone today. Scout, hearing something in Ethan's tone, glanced up at the man with an expression almost like curiosity. He's starting to trust you, Maya realized aloud. After everything he's been through, he's learning to trust again. The significance of it hung between them, impossible to ignore. If Scout could find his way back from such profound trauma, such deep-seated fear, what might be possible for two people who had once loved each other completely? Jake says he'll never be the same as a dog that's never known cruelty, Maya said softly. That those experiences are part of him now. But he can learn to live with his past without being controlled by it. Ethan's gaze found hers, steady and clear. Wise man, Jake. I've been thinking, Maya continued, the words coming easier now, propelled by the day's events, by Scout's example, about why I really left. It wasn't just the accident, or even losing the baby. It was fear. Fear? Ethan prompted when she paused. Of loving something so much that losing it would destroy me. Her voice caught. Of not being strong enough to survive that kind of pain again. Understanding dawned in Ethan's eyes. So you left before you could be left? Yes, she admitted, the truth raw but necessary. It was cowardly. It was human, he corrected gently. We all have our breaking points, Maya. Things we think we can't survive. Scout had settled at their feet, amber eyes moving between them as if following the conversation. "But we do survive," she said, reaching down to stroke the dog's head, a touch he accepted without flinching. "Somehow we keep going. We find our way back." Ethan's hand, still bearing traces of blood despite his attempt to clean up, reached for hers. She met him halfway, their fingers intertwining with the familiarity of puzzle pieces finding their match. "Back to what?" he asked, voice rough with emotion he no longer tried to hide. "I don't know yet," she answered honestly. "But I'd like to find out. If you would." Scout chose that moment to do something neither had seen before. He rose, stretched, and then deliberately moved to sit beside Ethan, close enough that his fur brushed against the man's leg. Not hiding, not seeking protection, offering connection. "Well," Ethan said, voice suspiciously thick, "would you look at that?" Maya smiled through the tears that had begun to fall freely. Jake would say that's trust taking root. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the ranch, three broken beings stood together on a porch, finding in each other the courage to begin again. Scout might never sleep by the fireplace without growling. That milestone remained distant, perhaps impossible. But in this moment, it no longer seemed to matter. What mattered was the journey they had begun together, the slow, painful process of healing, the trust, tentative but real, beginning to grow between them all. And for now, for tonight, that was enough. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.